I'm stronger. I'm smarter. I'm better. I am better.
They actually did it. Lucasfilm pulled off what I thought would be the absolute impossible move, and that's making an actual competent show since Mando. If there is one word to describe Star Wars television, it's inconsistent. They started off great, then went down at the bottom of the well until our Lord and Savior Tony Gilroy, probably butchered that name, I apologize, decided to pull out what seems to be dead weight and perform CPR, in this case Andor, and gave Star Wars television a second chance. Now I hate when studios overwhelm you with too much content. Crazy, I know, but let me explain before you decide to rip off my head. I've noticed a trend with studios, most notably Marvel and Star Wars. The more they dish out TV shows and films, quality deteriorates in each outing. Mando Season 1 was great because Disney had to win over the folks. Like, hey, Mando, Star Wars, right on Disney Plus. As expected, story was solid, great character work for the most part. For us fans, it was giving us a positive outlook because you know the sequels were completely dog shit. And oh boy, we were in for a ride. Disney saw they could make anything they want, just slap the Star Wars name on it, boom, you got seats in the theaters and money coming from the bank.
That's a lot of money.
So yeah, when I heard they were making season 2 and a possible 3rd season before the first season of Andor even fucking released, my expectations were hella low. So having the disappointing taste coming in from watching Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett,
why are you the way that you are?
the show actually exceeded my expectations by a whole lot. Tony Gilroy, who's one of the writers for Rogue One, which was also fantastic, now he's written his work of art and knocked Mando off the pedestal of being the top dog of Star Wars television. Yeah, you heard me, it's better than Mando Season 2. Let's face it, Mando Season 2 has aged poorly, very formulaic with its storytelling, and I mean very, very formulaic. Unnecessary cameos, which quite frankly bring nothing to the plot. Luke only contributed by taking away Grogu from Mando. Now, before you come from my throat, I'ma explain. Luke did contribute by taking Grogu away from Mando. You see, if you told me this claim, well, 2 years ago, I would have heavily agreed with, but Book of Boba Fett came out, and well, quite frankly, it took away any impact it had because KK, John, and Dave decided it's not about the story, it's about the fan service.
You fucking weepy willow shit sack.
Andor, at the other hand, takes a new direction with his dark tone, a more grounded approach with its story. You get to learn more about the roots of the Empire and pretty much a small beginning of the Rebel Alliance. Andor as a character essentially is the driving force in this story, showcasing every basis of the Empire system through him. Whether it's unfair prison systems, corrupted officials, and how different planets view the Empire. There's little to no nostalgic character besides Mon Mothma and Saw Gerrera. Makes complete sense because they are actually the foundation to the Rebel Alliance. The show begins with Andor walking into a nightclub on Milano 1 in search for his sister, but he runs into two cops who question on his involvement on the planet. Andor makes a bold decision and kills both the officers. This is where Andor becomes public enemy number 1 in the eyes of Cyril Karn, who takes his officers, and Andor is on the hunt. He heads back to his home planet of Ferrix and asks the ex-lover that he has something valuable to sell to her secret buyer. Now the show features flashbacks of Andor's childhood. He lived in a tribe which prominently consisted of children. His child life is filled with trauma from the execution of his stepfather and the Empire's liberation. Makes you actually feel for Andor. So when he murdered those two douchebag cops, you feel for his character given his past and the amount of oppression he's faced.
Good soldiers follow orders.
He meets up with the buyer Luthen and they both go on a journey, and he makes a deal to steal the credits the Empire is harboring to build an entire base on a native land. Seems like they're focusing on the whole Europeans treating the natives poorly, lying, and deceiving. So it's like what the Empire are doing in Andor to the natives of Aldhani. Bell, who's the leader of a small group of rebels, and the new, well, teammate, Andor, embark on a high-risk, high-reward mission. It's a success, but two members of the group sadly did not survive. One of them getting crushed to death, and the other getting blasted by Andor himself, while the other members just died trying to receive the credits all together. Now that Andor is, well, on his own, Luthen wants him dead, considering that Andor is a loose end to him, and could potentially jeopardize his and Mon Mothma's plan of creating a full-fledged Rebel Alliance. So not only is the Empire, but Luthen is also after him. Back at Ferrix, the Empire have actually taken notice of Andor and have seized the entire planet. His mother is getting sick and they're keeping an eye on her as her time passes by. Also, his ex is getting tortured by the new antagonist, Dedro Marrow. Bix is hearing the screams of children right in her ears. Geez, this show has really made the Empire into a ruthless asshole. Cause Andor gets arrested as well for being part of a disturbance crowd and gets sentenced to years in prison. This is where we get the idea how the Empire's prison system works, quite frankly, and well, quite unsurprisingly, it's heavily corrupted. Ah shit, it's Snoke. Wait, that's Andy Serkis playing another character, Kino Loy, who's almost near his end of his sentence, and well, him and Andor learn the prison is completely unfair, and which isn't surprising at all, because the writing is on the fucking wall. You just go in that prison, you do the labor, and well, if your sentence is up, you get transferred. Pretty much, you're just going to prison to die, which it's the Empire. It's not surprising. Well, knowing this idea of the Empire, well, putting you there to die, they make a bold decision to, well, create a prison ride to help them escape from the facility, in which is completely a success, but sadly to Kino, he can't swim. Andor learns his mother Marva is dead, so he heads back to Ferrix where they're preparing her funeral. The Empire has surrounded members in quest to see if Andor arrives to attend her funeral, in which he does, and he ends up freeing Bix. So before Marva's funeral is completed, she has created a hologram message for the people of Ferrix to fight against the oppression of the Empire, in which they do create a ride on the streets, and this buys Andor some time to send his close ones off his planet to free them from the Empire. But he actually has unfinished business to attend to. He meets Luthen once more and agrees to him he will join him to fight the Empire. No matter how many L's Star Wars has taken over the past, well, 7 years, there's always that one piece of content that keeps me interested in more. Andor is that piece. Mando Season 1 was that piece. The show takes a whole new route with the story, each character plays a part driving the story forward, and the show doesn't take a curve along the way. The main problem, the main conflict is still the center point. In Book of Boba Fett, the show takes a halt to catch up on Mando and teases a Season 3 near the end of the Book of Boba Fett Season 1. So you only had one episode to like fully fledge Mando, Boba Fett, all these characters to prepare for, well, a weak ass war that was overhyped to the fucking oblivion. They wasted 2 episodes on a tease and concluded the show in the most goofy way possible. Not only that, the finale of Book of Boba Fett diminished the finale of Mando Season 2 by having Grogu with Din Djarin, so all that crying, all that bullshit, like taking off his helmet, it's completely wasted. It doesn't matter because that's just, it has no involvement at all. While Andor, at the other hand, you follow Andor and learn interesting aspects about the Empire and how each person views, well, their ideologies. The Empire is actually intimidating. Empire, since Rogue One, has been downgraded to be a pathetic organization. Stormtroopers have suddenly become more dumbfounded, missing every single shot they fire. It was an issue stemming from the original trilogy that Disney and Lucasfilm have continued as a joke. But Andor takes them seriously. They hit their shots and surprisingly managed to kill most of the rebels that are trying to fucking break into the facility and steal the credits. In terms of the officers, they're always competing with one another, trying to one-up each other. Major Partagas, who enjoys all of this competition within the ISBs, as he sees it as trying to bring the best out of them. That's how the Empire succeeds. Andor, being the main vocal point of these ISBs to capture, has become a part of a bigger problem, something ISB agents fear. They're smart with their planning, just luck wasn't on their side. The Empire in Andor makes their defeat in the original trilogy all more satisfying. In Andor, they enjoy torture. They thrive off it. One of them wished to hang one of Andor's friend who's been tortured to have no sense of where the fuck he is, as the screams of those children have been inflicted into his head. Bix as well goes through the same process, but her strength keeps her from breaking. The Doctor seems to enjoy his own device of torture. It's creepy, it's uncomfortable, and that's what makes it all more satisfying when they lost. One of the more standout episodes was One Way Out. We learn more about the prison structure of the Empire, and not surprisingly, it's very unjust and not fair. You'd rather die than to be sentenced to a long agony, where there's no escape. It's time for the directors to treat the Empire as a serious group, not a separatist 2.0 where its leaders to its army are just one big joke of a faction. Kenobi failed to make Empire at least somewhat competent, as even Darth freaking Vader is one of the bigger idiots in the entire show. Stormtroopers and Mando couldn't hit for shit, nor were competent at all. They were all just treated as one big joke. But in Andor, seems to get all the right apples in the basket, not one bad direction whatsoever. Each character is memorable. A show filled with a bunch of characters can lead to boredom, but it all depends on how the characters play a role in the story. In Andor, I don't feel frustrated whenever someone enters the screen. I feel invested. Whether or not the character possesses one-dimensional qualities, not every character needs an arc. Salman Pakhu is one of the characters who's a friend of Andor's, but bites the bullet of getting tortured by the Empire and hanged due to, well, one of the officers apparently having kinky nature of witnessing bloodshed. Sadly, Pak left his son behind, and well, you feel bad for him. He cared for Andor and his family and received, well, undeserving consequences for it. Vix was Andor's ex. She cared for him. She faced the torture of hearing, well, children's screams in her ears, and she didn't break whatsoever. Bravery is what led to both characters to become likable in the eyes of the audience. There's another character in the show, Andy Serkis playing Kino Loy, is a character who goes through an entire arc in 3 episodes. Through these 3 episodes, we learn the structure of a typical, well, prison empire. I know I'm repeating myself with this constant line. Well, Tony is a fabulous writer, and I'm glad that he built on the empire, added regulations, more rules, more of their structure, how they like deal with these like prisoners. It's fabulous. The officers are cruel. They treat the prisoners like crap. Lino is like the locker room leader of a team. He cares for the prisoners as he can relate of getting that freedom once and for all. But Sally doesn't have the balls to do whatever it takes to attempt an escape. But one poor old man's death makes him realize they're only there at the prison to die. The idea of being free is all just false hope. Andor is that catalyst for the fucking Andy Serkis playing Kino Loy to get pushed to lead this riot and escape from the prison. But sadly for Linoy, the poor guy can't swim. Andor is actually a good character. Let's face it, if you'd ask anyone in the world on what was the least interesting aspect of Rogue One, guarantee 80% would say Andor was the weakest part of the film because essentially he was a boring character. More so of being Jyn Erso's, well, the boring partner. But in the show, they actually add emphasis to his character, giving him a solid background and deeper meaning to his hatred for the Empire. From as early as one of his tribe members getting shot from behind, facing torture in a prison, witnessing his own friends getting tortured by those very people. He makes mistakes but isn't perfect. You still root for him. He was all in it for the money, but facing numerous obstacles in his journey for a better life away from Ferrix, just like Marva, feeding the Empire has become his main goal in the long run, siding Luthen in his quest to create a spark to essentially burn the Empire down.